We ready? Okay. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Water and Hydroelectric Operations Committee meeting for August 19th. It's 9 a.m., and we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Chip Close. I'm the Water Operations Manager with the district, and I'd like to go around the room and give quick introductions. Start off with Director Miller.
Director Miller, Division 3. Director Beerwagen, Division 2.
Key and Summers, Hydroelectric Manager.
Chris Payne, Board Secretary.
Go ahead,
Sam
Pastor.
Robertson, Management Assistant.
Greg Jones, Interim General Manager.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And then we are at the point of the meeting where we'll open this up for public comment. And once again, I remind you that if you're joining us on Zoom, you have to press *9 to raise your hand. We will then unmute you and you can provide comments. This is for items that are not already on the agenda. So go ahead and raise your hand right now if you'd like to speak. Director Miller.
So, I received a letter titled Brewer Road Problem. This was sent via my home email. And from Barbara Thompson, August 13, subject Brewer Road, caution, this email originated outside, okay. Hi Scott, I'm Barbara Thompson on Brewer Road in Golden Oaks. I'm having a problem with NID that I could use your help with. Every time a water truck fills up at the Brewer Iron Horse corner, water pressure drops and zero water can be reached to our house. It likely affects other homes as well. I have called dispatch, but they don't know what to do. I suggested NID put a lockbox or sign at the problem water site or look into the pressure or look into the pressure drop problem. Surely not all customers have constant service interruption because they live uphill from a filling site. If you can help me solve this issue, that would be great. Thank you for your time and service, Barbara Thompson. So kind of weird. So this is a new system.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
And we are still having these hydrants where people come and draw tank water, is that what's?
Yeah, that's correct. So
Did you know about this?
we have had notifications of that in the past, and we've asked the tank fillers not to fill from those hydrants, and we will have to put another reminder out to make sure they're not going back there. They can overdraft the system fairly easily, and this is the result of that.
Because the outer reaches somewhat.
Yeah, exactly. So we will remind all those tank permit holders not to fill in that location, and hopefully that will alleviate the problem.
Can I get you to contact this lady?
Yes, please, and we can do that after the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. All right, hearing and seeing no other public comment, we will move on to item 1, item 1, approval of the minutes from the June 17th, 2020 meeting. Any comments, changes, or requests?
Look good to me.
All right, thank you. All right, hearing and seeing none, we will authorize those and move on. Item number 2 is the irrigation water request on South Fork of Wolf Creek. So I'll give you guys a little bit of background on this particular topic. During the 2013 through 2016 drought, the district received numerous hardship requests for additional waters for irrigation water. One of those came from a customer on the South Fork of Wolf Creek. Their request was for additional water flows for a portion of their property that wasn't being fed service from the Grove Canal. Their specific request was to get water from the Sunshine Valley Canal so that the water would travel down the South Fork of Wolf Creek and access a portion of their property that wasn't currently receiving water from the Grove. The district at the time, back in 2016, established a special contract as a hardship as part of the drought, in which we set up water for them on the Sunshine Valley Canal and sent it down to their property. That seemed to work decently. And the contract terminated at the end of the 2016 irrigation season, and it's kind of been quiet since then, which is good. Everything's been fine.
And by contract, this water was paid for?
That's correct, yes. We sold demand water.
At the current price that it was?
At the current price, correct, yes.
It was a water sale?
Yes, sir.
And how many inches are we talking about?
They started off with 5 minors inches and had to up it to 10 because it wasn't making it to the property.
Breaking it down.
Yeah, correct.
That was my question. How many inches does it take to make it down there?
Yeah. So, everything was moving along fine until about 2 weeks ago. Staff received a request from the customer once again that, they wanted water for the South Fork of Wolf Creek because it had gone dry. And staff spent some time investigating the request. Given the history, we knew about the previous delivery points, but, we looked at it once again and found there are other opportunities to send water to this parcel that don't necessarily utilize 10 miles of South Fork of Wolf Creek to get it there. And staff's concerns, there are multiple. One is that the previous delivery point from the Sunshine Valley is a lack of efficient delivery, is a potential water rights violation, and due to the lack of a current declaration of drought emergency, there's not really a hardship that we can offer up either. So, again, staff looked at the delivery points, and in your packet you can see a map that shows the 2 different locations that are possible to serve ag waters to this parcel. One of them, from the top right-hand portion of the map that's in the packet, you can see originates from basically the lower Colfax Road area, runs all the way through South Fork of Wolf Creek, all the way down to the parcel close to 49 in the Golden Oaks area. That's a long ways, and it doesn't necessarily meet with the district's policies of water conservation, where in our rules and regs, we state that the district has a duty to protect and preserve its water resources for future generations. Water is a limited commodity and should be utilized in a responsible manner in order to preserve water and protect the district's water rights. Conservation and efficient water use must be practiced. So, keeping that in mind, we found that on the bottom left-hand side of this map, we found an alternate delivery point from the Grove Canal that is only about 2 miles, and it utilizes a little bit of a natural waterway. It's not the South Fork of Wolf Creek, but it is a little bit of a natural waterway that could go down from the Grove Canal down to Brewer Road, hits a small section of the South Fork of Wolf Creek, and then gets water to this parcel that is requesting it. Staff feels like this is a better alternative. However, we know that the folks in question really are purchasing this water more or less to wet up the South Fork of Wolf Creek. That's really their main goal.
That's my question. What was their use? What are they irrigating down there?
So, we've been...
What?
She has,
Way down.
the parcel.
At the parcel.
Actually makes purchase heads goats. And
Yeah.
the creek dries up, but that's where they normally, part of our land.
Yeah, so,
It was legit. How much was the contract before? Cost-wise, what is 10 miners inch these days on this?
So the schedule for demand water currently, so for 5 miners inches, it's $556, but we also have to install a box, which is $1,200, because there was no permanent delivery location installed yet.
On the other occasion?
That's correct, yes. 10 miners inches for 10 days would be $874 plus the $1,288 for a box install.
So it's a finite number, it's a finite number.
Yeah, right.
Just a water signal.
Having said all that, the struggle that we have, I think, is that we need to be sure that the district's selling these waters for ag purposes and not necessarily for wetting up Wolf Creek. And the reason I state that is within our water rights, we have a purpose of use that's authorized. And it's for ag, or domestic, or, various other reasons, but selling them for environmental purposes in a creek is not one of them.
So, just to be the devil's advocate, because I thought about all that, first, 2 questions. Are we selling water to anybody else down that creek? Do we have other customers?
We have customers, so if you look at the map, up at the upper right-hand corner on the lower Colfax area, we have a couple of intermittent flow accounts. Basically, what those accounts are is if there's excess water coming off the canals and going into the creek, you can buy a purchase of it, but there's no guarantee of flow.
Okay.
So it's only that if it's there, you can use it. If it's not, you're out of luck. Same thing with the bottom half of this map, the bottom left corner. You can see where the Grove Canal terminates.
Yes.
The excess tailwaters from that canal flow into the South Fork of Wolf Creek, and we have a few intermittent flow account customers there. They're all well below this property, and so the section in the middle, we really don't sell water. It's not a ravine we're in, generally speaking.
Yeah, it's not like Wolf Creek up here, where we're just running a bunch of water.
No, we're not using this as a conveyance currently.
Okay, and the other part of that then was, just like I said, to be the devil's advocate about, selling water that's not, well, the thing that comes to mind is people filling their ponds with water. They're buying water from their pond. That's the same, that to me kind of is the same, I'm not arguing in favor or against, but just the idea of it not being the right thing to do in a creek, but it's all right to put it in a pond. You know, that's sketchy for me. I mean, we all do it, right?
Yeah.
I do it, but I'm not with the NID water. But I'm more see as a management logistical, and just the loss of getting that water, getting enough water down there.
Yeah, I think what we're talking about here is 10 miles
Yes.
of
Right.
a current dry creek bed that the stated request is to help pasture, to help water up some goats or sheep. But this request can be taken care of by running water out of the Grove Canal, where we know that we would be more efficient with our water out of the Grove Canal at a 2-mile stretch versus up here at the top at a 10-mile stretch. It's logical.
So, and to add to that, so since these requests have come in on the South Fork of Wolf Creek, and there's been a bunch, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of folks along this creek that are concerned. We've also had additional requests for water flows in Rush Creek and Cherry Creek. It just seems to be expanding. It's kind of strange because it's not necessarily a drought year, but for whatever reason, it's very dry in this area. So, if we open up Pandora's box, so to speak, where do we stop? Where do we stop feeding all these little creeks? And obviously, if there's an ag nexus and there's an efficient conveyance available and it happens to utilize the creek, well, then maybe that's a different discussion. But utilizing 10 miles of an already dry facility when we have an alternate supply that's much closer seems like the more prudent option. But again, it may not address what the customer is truly asking for. So, with that, staff's recommendation on sales from the Sunshine Valley Canal, we're recommending we deny that option. But if the customer is interested in deliveries from the Grove, I think we feel comfortable supporting that. But again, it has to be for agricultural purposes and not necessarily for wetting up a creek.
I support that.
I do believe we have some customers that are in the area who are on the line and probably would like to contribute to the discussion. So if it's okay with the board members, I go ahead and open that up for some public comment. So a reminder to press *9 if you'd like to speak.
Debbie Porter.
Okay, we have Debbie Porter on the line. Debbie, go ahead, and you should be unmuted, and you're...
This is the goat lady. This is the customer, the goat lady.
This is the one.
Yes.
Okay, is it working now?
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's Debbie here. Okay, I've been listening to the comments. I appreciate that you're meeting about this, and of course I've talked with Chip, and I'm still frustrated, obviously, because I understand the NID position that you don't want to add water from way up at the head like we did in 2016. I'm trying to come up with a way to have this be a win-win for everyone, because obviously Fish and Wildlife has been involved, and he walked it and saw that the water was disappearing way up, probably up in Lodestar, and this was weeks ago, so I don't even know if there's any water now. I'm curious because my understanding is that the South Wolf Creek in the summer traditionally got its water from overflow from the canal that's up off of Dog Bar and possibly some of the ponds that sit outside the Golden Oaks area that would overflow occasionally into the creek to keep it running. It's a frustration because I worry about fire danger now that so much is dying within the creek bed. I worry, of course, about all the wildlife, which I understand is not NID's purview per se. I see this as such a win-win for NID because of how many people are really wanting to see water running in the creek. And I was hoping either, because I don't know who might have ponds up above Golden Oaks, if it's possible to increase flow into their ponds to overflow, or like you're saying, Chip, I realize you're trying to help me as a customer, and I'll never turn down water. You probably all know that I am a customer, and my husband and I run off our water system. We run hoses all the way down to the creek on our property, and we run them 24 hours a day because there's kind of a natural pond in the creek, and we're trying to keep the fish, all the wildlife that live in the creek, all the wildlife that need to go to get water there, because now there's a lot more of them, of course. So we're already doing our best, and I'm really looking at the importance of, as you spoke, a lot of people would like to see water in the creek again. And we've been here for 23 years, been a customer that long, and that creek has only gone dry during the drought of 2016, and occasionally, or way earlier than that, for a day or two, because I think somebody was probably diverting water. I just am here to really ask if there's any other way we can try to get water flowing in the creek, if there's something I can do to help see that happen. So I'll stop talking now and let you guys respond. Thank you.
Thanks for the input, Debbie. Appreciate it. Do we have any other public comment on this topic? Okay. So, hearing and seeing none, back to the topic at hand. That's the dilemma we're up against. And really, it's a discussion of water use and priorities for the district, and as well as our philosophy moving forward. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay, everybody, so welcome back. We apologize. We've experienced a power outage here at the headquarters office. We do not have video going yet. We're still working on it, but we...
They're gonna get motion sickness.
we're using an iPad now, so forgive us if it's a little jittery. But we're getting
By the
things back
way,
in order here.
there we go. I was looking at the ceiling.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
We're still working on it. There we go. All right.
We got Beer Wagon and.
We got the important people.
We got the important folks.
All right. So,
And there's nothing on.
again, apologize. It looks like we're back up and running, and I think we were at a point where we were finishing up the discussion on steps moving forward and looking for maybe direction from the board members at this point in time regarding the South Fork of Wolf Creek delivery. Staff's recommendation, again, was that we deny the selling of water specifically up at the lower Colfax area and instead use the much closer facility from the Grove Canal. If the customer's interested in that option, we would pursue that.
I support the staff recommendation for this.
And I think Ms. Porter should contact the people who are customers higher up there at the Sunshine Valley area and see what can be arranged with them.
Yeah, okay. So receiving that recommendation, we will then work with Debbie on one of those two options and see what we can come up with and hopefully find a solution that works for everyone. So, thank you very much for that.
Well, all right. So we're done. All right.
Yes, thank you, Debbie. We'll be in touch. We'll follow up after the meeting.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot, Chip. Thank you, man. I appreciate it, and all of you. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, with that, we'll close item 2, move on to item 3, California Public Utilities Commission Self-Generation Incentive Program, SGIP.
Yeah.
Pass that to Kean.
All right, thanks, Chip. So we have a couple of different goals with this item, and it's certainly highlighted with our current power situation here. So first of all, our goal is to educate the committee here on the Self-Generation Incentive Program, the SGIP. We're going to receive an overview of a proposal from JTN Energy and Golden State Renewable Energy about battery storage, and then our goal is to get some direction from the committee on whether or not this is something the district would like to move forward with. On the phone today, I believe we still have Todd Dorner. Todd is with JTN Energy, and we've worked together previously on the REMAC Coalition, which is where this proposal came from, and he's joined by Mark Folke from Golden State Renewable Energy. And so Todd and Mark, I'll hand this over to you. Do we have the
We can share it in our room, but we
They-
can't share it here.
Okay.
We got it.
It's on there.
That's them.
So we are,
That is being shared.
That's your proposal.
okay, all right, so we are seeing your presentation, so if you want to go ahead and walk through it.
got it.
We'll follow it along.
We'll follow it along here in the room. So Todd or Mark, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Keith. This is Todd Corner here, Mark Folke also on the line. I think I'll kick off and walk us through the first few slides and then pass it over to Mark. Thank you, gentlemen. As Kean said, very timely to be talking about backup batteries given the ongoing rolling blackouts and fire issues. I'm in Walnut Creek, California, and I actually smell smoke right now from some fires in Vacaville, and I'm expecting some outages myself. Just for your background, JTN Energy is a power marketing and consulting firm. I've been developing renewable energy power projects for about 20 years. In the last 5 years, with the founding of JTN Energy, I've shifted my focus to help the owners of existing infrastructure assets, renewable projects to maximize the value of those assets. And it's in that context that I've worked with Kean and a number of other different water agencies across the state to try to revive California's feed-in tariff, which is a power sales program for small renewable projects, including small hydros. And then I know Mark Tholke, going back 15 years, we both were developing large utility scale wind projects. We were competitors 15 years ago, and I've tracked his progress, and he shifted into battery storage maybe 5-7 years ago. And I'll pass it off to Mark to tell a little bit more about Golden State.
Great. Well, it's nice to meet everyone. Thank you. Appreciate the adaptability, getting things going. So just so I understand, so the power's on, but the Zoom is from an iPad. Is that what's going on?
Yeah, so we're running on our backup generator at this point. I believe that people in the room are looking at an iPad, but we also have your presentation. You're projecting your presentation, so the people on the Zoom meeting can see it, and then we're seeing it at live on our screen here because it is very tiny from across the room on the iPad. So it is up there. So yeah, I think we can see everything that you're seeing at this point.
Okay, great. So when I toggle a slide, you'll know when I toggle. I don't have to say. Yep. Okay, great.
Nope.
All right. Well, thank you. And yeah, again, Mark Tholke, and looking forward to working with the possibility of working with NID, and have been really enjoying working with Todd Thorner. My background, I'm an energy guy. I'm a California native. Actually, GSR Energy stands for Golden State Renewable Energy. These are some of the projects at the bottom that I've done over my career. The Shiloh projects are in the Montezuma Hills off of Highway 12. The Pacific Wind and Catalina Solar projects are down in Tehachapi in the Antelope Valley. That Sacramento Soleil was in 2008, 1 megawatt was a big project. And then most recently, that where it says SCE LCR, I left my previous company where I was the vice president for the Western region, responsible and accountable for project development for Anexco EDF Renewable Energy, and then moved over to a company called Advanced Microgrid Solutions, which was battery storage. All we did was battery storage, and in fact behind the meter battery storage, which is what this project endeavor is all about. So we'll go into what that means when I say the SCE LCR, but what that was is a 50 megawatt contract with Southern California Edison, where we built 98 projects that are behind the meter. Almost all of those were using Tesla energy. And in fact, we installed more Tesla energy product to the commercial industrial product than any other party in North America, including Tesla themselves. And that's because we were implementing on this 50 megawatt project for Southern California Edison. I'm not going to read through all of the bullet points on this slide. The point really is just, we built a team of 10 developers, and really we were focused on getting it done, getting the projects in the ground, making sure they worked well, making sure that the financing parties were happy, and they kept the spigot on to continue funding the project. And this was the first of its kind. It was fun for me because it was a new challenge, and we were able to get it done. We stand on our record in that regard. There were 98 projects. Some of the customers that were non-wastewater treatment facility customers are, we had 6 at Walmart. We had 24 at the Irvine Company, which is a high-end Class A office building down in Southern California, Class A office developer. So there's 24 individual buildings. California State University, City of Long Beach, and we worked with a number of wastewater treatment facilities. We had 6 at the Irvine Ranch Water District, and we had 4 at the Inland Empire Utilities Agency. Again, most of these are in Southern California because we were developing out on this project for Southern California Edison. So happy to link anybody up if someone has questions. For example, the Irvine Ranch Water District, Jose Zepeda, He offered to facilitate a tour if someone would want to go down there. I know we're in a COVID situation, so that might be limited, but he could talk to what we did. And again, we're really serious about what we do in terms of saying what we, doing what we say we're going to do, which is if we say we're going to build a project and we say it's going to work, we're very serious about doing just that. And we stand on our record in that regard. So I'll just fly through this. Some of the activities that GSR does and what's required to do these behind the meter C&I energy storage projects. Again, I don't want to read through all these, but this gives a summary of the types of activities that we need to do. We need to do the initial design work. We need to submit for the SGIP application, which we're going to get into, and then basically serve as the ongoing liaison with the SGIP administrator to make sure that all of the documentation is set up and organized well. We need to get the interconnection. Actually, one of the lessons I've learned is to start the interconnection as soon as possible to avoid surprises along the way. If we, obviously get through the permitting process and then oversight of all of the EPC work. We'll get into this in a minute, but we only use, one of the things I feel pretty strongly about is only using tier 1 battery supply and EPC partners that have a demonstrated track record. So we're not talking about experimental equipment, and we're not talking about experimental or new EPC subcontractors. These are folks that have installed hundreds of behind the meter energy projects, whether they are Bloom Energy fuel cell boxes or behind the meter energy storage, which is what we're talking about right here. I'll just, as a real quick aside, when I started over at GSR, I was coming from the large scale project development business, and I have to confess, I had a hard time finding my first hire.
Yeah. Uh-oh, Mark, are you still there? We seem to have lost your audio. And he is frozen.
He is frozen, but I'm still here.
All right, Todd, you want to take it away from there?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Maybe we can get the aside about GSR when Mark maybe has to log back in.
Yeah.
But just to
I think it'd be good if you walked us through the SGIP real quick and the actual proposal. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So the SGIP program, it has been around for 20 years. It was formed actually in the energy crisis around 2000, 2001. The legislature set it up. The goals of the SGIP were originally to install various technologies coming to market behind the meter to effectively reduce peak demands on the distribution system and the transmission system, and to deploy distributed energy resources. And the program is ratepayer funded. It's deployed over 2,000 projects with almost 500 megawatts of capacity. There was a shift around 2009 where they made explicit the objective of actually reducing greenhouse gases through the program. And so the program's been chugging along for a long time. There was a shift just about 2 years ago with the massive wildfires here in California, where the administrators basically decided that it would be a more effective use of the ratepayer funds to shift the focus towards battery energy storage instead of just generation technologies. So over $1 billion budget was committed with the wildfires in 2018. That was a budget targeted to last through 2024. Almost 90% of the budget is specifically focused on energy storage and funding behind the meter energy storage. The specific incentive category that we're targeting for NID is the largest budget category. Over $600 million was allocated to this category. It's called equity resilience. We'll talk about the criteria, but it's largely focused on addressing high-risk communities threatened by fire, with disadvantaged or low-income areas, and providing critical services, police, fire, hospitals, wastewater is one of those things that's included. And the incentive level for this budget category is $1 per watt hour. And by design, that amount of funding is meant to cover the entire cost for a developer to procure, install, and operate a backup battery system for 10 years. I also should note that important context here is that the $600 million plus budget through 2024 is because it's a generous incentive and because so many different agencies and communities are feeling the threat of blackouts and fire danger, they're quickly getting reserved. And it's our current estimate that the entire $612 million budget through 2024 is likely to be fully reserved and gone in the next 4 to 8 weeks. The program provides updates of where they are in the reservation, basically being knocked down and down every week. And so we basically come up with a business proposal that moves quickly under an MOU to be able to lock in those reservations, and then provides us time to put in place and negotiate a full contract. Just a quick additional comment about this category of equity resiliency. There's a slide here that identifies the 3 criteria to receive the highest level of incentive budget. There are other budgets and monies available to other types of customers, residential customers, agency customers that don't meet all these 3 criteria. But in the case of NID, we were able to identify that 13 of the sites included in the proposal meet the 3 criteria, which are: 1, you need to be in an area that's under a fire threat. And there's a few different ways that they define that, but all these sites meet that criteria. The facilities have to provide critical services, and water, wastewater, water treatment, flood control are all included in the definition. And so it meets that criteria. And the last one is the customer, NID, needs to serve some disadvantaged communities that are suffering from these public safety power shutoffs. And there's a mapping program, and we've confirmed indeed that NID does meet that criteria as well. So with that, I think I'll pass it. Mark, if you're back to talk a little bit about the structuring of the SGIP program.
Yes, thank you for your patience. We have a little bit of smoke in our area as well. It was caused by the lightning fire, so something happened with the internet connectivity. But I'm back. Thank you for your patience. So the SGIP, again, it's the Self-Generation Incentive Program. I caught up at the tail end of what Todd was saying, but this is ratepayer funded by the California Public Utility Commission. And the way this works is that we submit an application, and the queue is filling up for this unprecedented equity resiliency category. When I was at Advanced Microgrid Solutions, we did use the SGIP. All of those projects I mentioned did utilize the SGIP, but the SGIP amount was actually about a third of what the amount of the equity resiliency is. So it's an important opportunity. And the way it works is that 50% of that SGIP amount is paid at system commissioning. By the time that the check comes in, it's approximately 2 to 3 months after permission to operate from the interconnecting utility. The project is operational. And then over 5 years, it's called a performance-based incentive. The remaining 50% of the incentive is paid out over 5 years. That is calibrated with greenhouse gas emission reduction. So we have some software providers that we work with to ensure that the greenhouse gas emissions is actually reduced. That's part of the regulations associated with the SGIP. And if you don't reduce, the battery does not reduce energy, it does not reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It's actually, there's actually penalized by that not all of the latter 50% is paid out. So they really incentivize folks to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in compliance with California law. In terms of the SGIP program, I just want to confirm that it's GSR is going to take care of all aspects of this, from the application to answering any questions. We do need some signatures along the way, and in particular with the initial application. And to the extent that you might get a notification about something, then you would just forward that to us, and then we resolve that. That's our job, to make sure that the SGIP incentive is in place, and it's a fundamental part of the value proposition of the project, because the SGIP incentive pays for essentially the battery project, and that's why we're able to introduce this to NID, that there's no out of pocket whatsoever for you. In terms of the next slide I have is just with regard to the contract that we've been using, and the contract structure that we've been using in other locations, other wastewater treatment facilities, food banks, and grocery stores. I don't mind telling you that I have a personal agenda to get some of these batteries at food banks to keep the refrigeration on. But with regard to the way this structure works, is that there's no upfront cost whatsoever to NID, and in fact no ongoing O&M costs. That's all responsibility for GSR to handle the upfront CapEx, and to also handle the ongoing maintenance. And the reason why we can do that is just frankly on the back of the SGIP equity resiliency incentive. It's just as plain as that. It's an unprecedented incentive that was, I think, created in response to the wildfires. And the incentive level is so high that I just don't think it's going to be around that much longer. So in terms of the project portfolio, you can see the estimated CapEx of if we were to do all of the projects, and I want to get back to that in a minute, about all, which projects, but assuming we would do all of them, we talk about $5 million, a little over $5 million in estimated CapEx. The battery is sized for 4-hour duration, but I want to talk through this for a second. So the battery is sized for the maximum peak of that particular facility over the course of a 12-month period. However, if after the detailed engineering review, which is actually our first proposed next step, which we'll get to in the next slide, we'd like to understand what critical loads could be are more important than others. I mean, many of these facilities will not have individual loads, and we'd be talking about the entire facility. But that's just something we work out during the engineering review. The bill savings that would accrue to NID would be, through the PG&E bill, through the operation of the battery, aside from the backup capabilities that I'd be happy to talk into more detail. In addition to the backup capabilities, there's also a savings that is produced with the battery, as the battery is shaving the peak, and basically through the dispatch logic in the algorithms of the battery software, the battery will automatically charge at times of low cost and discharge at times of higher cost. In that way, what we call clipping the peak, it'll drop that demand charge, and each month there will be an economic benefit. The equipment itself is warranted for 15 years, so that's pretty straightforward. The third bullet point here, I want to emphasize the tier 1. I've used a lot of Tesla equipment. We're not a Tesla shop, and we are flexible. If Tesla does not have a battery product that is appropriate, we could look to other battery manufacturers. LG Chem, Samsung, Socomec is one that I'm in the process of exploring, but Socomec uses LG Chem. The underlying battery cells are important. It's very important, in my view, to use a tier 1 supplier. Samsung, LG Chem, Tesla actually uses Panasonic as the underlying cells at that gigafactory in Nevada. And then just in terms of battery installers, we like to use people who've done it before and can stand behind their work. I'm just going to fly through this next slide, and then we can maybe talk through any questions. But an important next step is for Josh Fife. He's a person I've worked with for years. I'd like to request that we have a conversation with the appropriate engineer from NID to talk through each individual site and the horsepower, the pumps, the configuration of each individual site, and what backup needs we might be able to fulfill for each individual site. And in that way, we can really confirm the solution, the backup solution. What we've been doing is, and let me get through this for a second because it's a little wonky, but I want to go through it. So what we've been doing is execute, in order to get into the queue, the SGIP incentive queue, we've been putting in an application with a memorandum of understanding, which is really a 2-page document. Frankly, it's termination for convenience for either party. But what that does is it gets us into the queue. And 90 days after the SGIP administrator gives us what's called a conditional reservation letter, which is confirmed that our application has been received and they don't have any issues with their application. Within 90 days of that, we need to provide the SGIP administrator what's called a proof of project milestone. The proof of project milestone is the binding agreement. So I guess it's theoretically possible to start with the binding agreement before the SGIP application is submitted. The downside in doing that is that by the time we run through the contract reviews, I worry that the queue will be full. That the SGIP queue will be full. So as an innovation, what we've been doing all across California is submitting the SGIP application with this MOU. And I can go through what needs to be signed in the individual application. It's basically the application itself. It's an attestation that the host customer understands the resiliency capabilities of the battery. We need to provide some other documents, which you'll see, but you don't need to sign. How are we going to configure this? What type of battery technology? And I don't think in your case we need evidence of 5013 status. But in any event, there's some documents that we need to submit along with the application. And then within 7 days of the application, a 5% deposit needs to be placed. GSR, we're going to cover that 5%. So consistent with the statement that there's no out-of-pocket, even though this 5% deposit is refundable, we're gonna put the 5% down rather than asking you to put the 5% down. And the way that works, just for your information, is that the deposit is refunded back to us, or back to the person, whoever puts the 5% down. That 5% is fully refunded at permission to operate. So at the end of the project, and that's the way it's a good policy. That's the way the SGIP administrator confirms that people are serious about the application that they've submitted, and they're serious about bringing it through to completion. So again, we would have, after the application is submitted, 90 days to finalize the contract. When I say 90 plus, what that means is that it's 90 days after the conditional reservation letter. The conditional reservation letter is the formal acceptance of our application. So if they lag for 2 weeks, it's 90 days plus 2 weeks. So that concludes the overview, and happy to answer any questions.
So I think just high level to make sure we understand what we're talking about here. I'm not hearing any money from the district at any point during this process through the installation, commissioning, operating, and maintaining for the next 15 or so years, other than staff time to support it and some attorney's fees that will maybe be needed to review these MOUs. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so then the district would realize an estimated at this point $52,000, we'll call it $50,000 or so, $50,000 to $75,000 a year in annual bill savings as a result of the reoperation. And I think so could you walk us through what would have happened had we had these batteries here today? So what happened today, it sounds like it was a major disturbance on the grid, and 10,000 or so customers are offline. The power tripped offline. It took the entire building down. It took 20, 30 seconds for the standby generator to kick on. And I don't have any way of knowing if it's still running or if the power's back on. But should that happen in the future, the batteries would have immediately carried that load, and then carried that load for as long as they could have. It sounds like it's the 4 hours at peak load. It could be much longer at a standby load. So theoretically, we could still be sitting here without the generator running. Is that correct?
Yes. As long as this building is one of the service accounts with the battery, but if for example, this building were, that's absolutely correct. And the battery would have been what we call topped off, but the battery will have been charged in anticipation of potential grid disturbances. So for example, during the wildfire season of September, October, November, the battery will actually be topped off in a way to be prepared for possible grid disturbances. So what you just described is accurate. The only caveat I would make is that 52,000 assumes that all of the facilities are in fact enrolled, and I just want to bracket that I before we confirm that, I need my engineer to talk with your engineering team.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. We brought this to the committee kind of quickly given the timelines, and yeah, your team hasn't talked to our team, and we've been exchanging a couple of questions back and forth. My goal today is to bring this to the committee and have the two directors either give us a thumbs up, this is something we want to chase and we want to push hard on in the next 90 to 120 days, or this is a great program, but it's just not where the district wants to head at this point. And so that's my goal. And so with that, I'd open to directors' questions and staff in the room, or if you don't have any, we can move to the public questions.
So I was initially excited about sitting here before you described the charge the batteries during off-peak, use it during on-peak. I go, oh, this is a good idea.
Yeah.
This is a really good idea. But the main reason is for protection in down power time and off-grid time. So I think it's worth pursuing. I think it all sounds win-win. I know there's maybe some details, devils in the details that.
Absolutely.
surface, it looks really good to me. I'm excited about it. I've heard that battery is the way to go for all of us that are even at home rather than generation, so.
Kean, I have a question.
Yeah.
We talked about the 13 sites. We didn't really see a map of where those 13 sites may be, but I'm assuming those 13 sites also contain diesel generators currently, or they will, because we've done a pretty good job at identifying diesel generations.
Yes. So sorry.
Yeah, just let me finish that. And so the $52,000 a year savings is peak savings from, I'm assuming, the kilowatt hour delivery cost for PG&E, for energy. It doesn't include the savings that would be for those hours of running a battery that we would have been running a diesel generator, right?
Yes.
Generate gas price.
Yeah, that's correct. And there's also the greenhouse gas savings at that point, right? So there's the dollars associated with not running the diesel generator. There's the greenhouse gas savings associated with coming off the batteries for those 4-ish or more hours, depending on the load at the time.
Right. Okay.
And so, and just a little clarity on how we picked the 15 sites. So I went through and we have very well documented what the district's 15 biggest demand sites are. We picked 15 because that encompasses the overwhelming majority of our power usage. We have a lot of little meters here and there, and so this is the majority of the district's load. The two of them, one of them fell out North Auburn because it didn't meet the criteria, and then one of them fell out because it was just too intermittent. The usage just isn't there. It's a pump station that we don't use often. So that's how we picked the 15. They're spread out throughout the district. This building is one of our biggest demands, the headquarters here, but then it's pump stations, water treatment plants, and the various sites that we have.
So who found who in this?
So JTN approached us. As I mentioned, I've been working with Todd on this REMAT coalition work, and through that work, we started talking about, there's this other opportunity out there. I can say that we were approached by other vendors. There are a lot of people trying to do this right now, and we get these kind of unsolicited emails out of to some of our general accounts. And I did have one other vendor prepare a proposal for it. Their proposal was not as convincing from a cost standpoint. They wanted us to come up with all the money up front. They wanted us to do the design process. These JTN and GSRE are using a different model for their process here.
And isn't NID already 95% green or something?
Yeah, so that's
Some of this is based on,
Yeah, so this we are using our generation at the Scotts Flat Powerhouse via the RES-BCT program. So we have talked to them about that, and they're confident that this will complement that program. The RES-BCT is kind of you convert your power into dollars, and that converts back in dollars power at the downstream end. So any peak shaving that we can do, any changing of our energy demand profile is still a benefit to us there.
and then back to the generator question, seems like we just upgraded all our generators, so is that just money that was wasted?
No. So
How would they be utilized in the future?
So
And require a 48-hour outage or a 17-hour outage, and then the generators are there?
And so it's going to vary by site and what the demand is at that site. So I believe the power just came back on. I think that's what that hit was.
These batteries, so then the generators would still be there to back up the battery.
Correct. So as we have these 2-day, 4-day, whatever they go through PS events, the generators would be required to kick on at that point.
So we're going to continue to maintain them and have them just run periodically, whatever we do to keep them.
Maintain, yes, but theoretically less maintenance, right? So the generator would probably not have run during this incident that we just survived here. So that's less wear and tear on the generator, that's less starts, less stops, less hours. And the batteries would have done what they're designed to do, charge and discharge through this. So there is just not really the maintenance component associated with that.
It's an additional redundancy system.
Yeah.
And then it didn't sound good in the middle of all this. They're talking about that the budgets for this has been already allocated out to 2024. Already been spent or promised, and that the state's probably not gonna replenish this. So,
This is a one-time deal.
Well,
you always like that in a sales pitch. So that's my angst into, so who found us, and then here's this, take it or, 'cause the clock's ticking. You hate to be sold something that way. But, sorry, that's truly what I was feeling, but the question was, they said that the budget through 2024 has already been spent, promised, otherwise allocated, and that the state was not likely to replenish it. So I'm confused. Emotions aside, I just was confused by that.
yeah, so Todd or Mark, can you maybe comment on that, on the timing here? So it sounds like there's a little bit of money left in after 2024. Is that what you're saying?
Todd, if I may. So what's happened here is that, what's happened here is that the state of California created this new category of this equity resiliency. And again, this SGIP has been around for a while, but there is this new category, and it probably isn't a fair indicator that other people have reached out, because in my opinion, it is unprecedented, because the level of the incentive is so high. And what they've done is, for a 4-year period, through the ratepayers of California, they have planned to allocate, to basically direct monies from, I think it's the public goods charge on everybody's bill. But they basically planned that over 4 years, a portion of that, of those monies will be allocated to this SGIP equity resiliency budget category. And it's a substantial amount of money. Over 4 years, I think Todd talked about it's over $500 million. But what they've done is that they've said, okay, well, since this is for resiliency, we're just going to collapse over the 4 years. It's first come, first serve, starting now. It's actually starting May 18th. May 12th. So the queue, started then, and the queue is open, and it's not going to close tomorrow. But there is real concern that it will fill up, and I believe very, very strongly that it will fill up soon. I don't think it'll last this year. I don't think it's gone next week, but my best guess is 4 to 8 weeks. It is possible that the money will be, that there will be more money allocated to the SGIP equity resiliency budget. I mean, with these wildfires, the state of California policy apparatus does not, wants to seem like they're doing something, of course. So it is possible that there'll be more money allocated, but thus far there haven't been. So that would be the only thing that I could see as a variable. Perhaps there would be more monies allocated, but we don't know whether that's the case.
But this money is available for your estimated 4 to 8 weeks. It's not completely sold out through 2024, I think was Director Miller's concern.
Yeah. So I don't know if I was clear, but if there's no more money allocated to this budget category, then it's what we've got right now in the budget. and it's 4 years collapsed into a first come, first serve now. And I think the reason why the policymakers did that is because, you know, let's have resiliency now rather than wait 3 years. So I think the answer is yes. If no more money is allocated, then the budget is open right now and it's steaming forward. I have some charts that I can show if you want, but it's something like 60 some odd % gone in PG&E territory already.
Yeah, and Mark is tracking this on a weekly basis when data comes out from the state on what the incentive levels are. And just this week I asked him, so how's it looking? And he said another 5% of the remaining budget is gone. It took a week to run through 5%. And there's no guarantees that it's a straight line 5% per week. And so that's why we have some squish room. Things could accelerate, things could slow down, but it seems clear that the available budget is going to be gone in, you know, a month or 2 months. And that's really why we've come up with the business proposal and structure of working with public agencies where we'll post the deposit monies, because we want to be able to get, you know, hold that option available for public agencies to take the time, dig in and put a contract in place. And if it isn't a fit, it isn't a fit, but it would be terrible to spend a lot of time on this and then show up and no more incentive.
This is Greg. At any point in that 90-day window of an MOU, for any reason, we could back out, the deposits returned, no harm, no foul. Is that sort of what I heard?
That's right.
The one thing we ask for in the, that is right. The one thing we ask for in the MOU is that the host customer doesn't terminate and go with somebody else. Because then we're out the 5% and we're kind of out the investment that we've made in terms of time and resource and all that stuff. But to be clear, it's termination for convenience. If for whatever reason, NID decided not to go forward, we would terminate it and you know, GSR, we would have to figure out how to handle the deposit, but not from you. We would work to get the deposit back from the SGIP administrator.
And if the committee wants to go this direction, you know, obviously our attorneys will review the MOU and weigh in on it and confirm that. But my quick glance at it, it is a very brief document that does what they say it does. So yeah. So should we, if there are no other director's questions, should we see if we have any public comment on the item? If we can, if we can.
I decided perhaps we can take a break and we'll jump back through. Oh, sorry, I just gotta figure out how to work the iPad.
Yeah.
Here we go. Participants. Look at that.
All right, so it's star 9 to raise your hand?
Star 9 to raise your hand.
Back up. Yeah. Okay.
Ron Norton's stuck with us, but he's not raising his hand.
Okay, so we're not seeing anybody raising their hand.
Raising their hand.
So we'll go ahead and move along. So I am looking for some direction on this out of the committee. Is this something that we want to pursue and move forward with?
I like Scott, had the same 2 questions he asked. They were in the back of my mind, why this guy, why now? However, I also like the idea because of the incentive. So I'm in favor. Yeah, I'm quite for it.
Okay.
And you are recommending it, team?
Yes, I believe that this program, these batteries.
Support staff's position.
Thank you. All right. So with that, we'll close the item. It sounds like we need to take a brief break to transition off of the iPad and back onto the regular computer. So we will take a 5-10 minute recess.
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
5-minute recess and come back and go from there. Thank you, Todd and Mark.
Thank you,
Thank you
Kean.
for your time.
Thank you, directors. Bye-bye.
Summer's private.
Okay, we're back live. Thank you, everybody, for sticking around with us, with the power outages and generator operations. We've had a few hiccups. Thank you for sticking with us, though.
Sam's over there making that story comment.
Frustration is setting in. So we have now made it through item 3. We're going to move to item 4, which is the preliminary 2021 Hydroelectric Department budget, and Kean is on tap for that.
All right, thank you, Chip. So just a high-level overview of the budget here, and then we'll walk through line by line and answer any detailed questions you have here. The goal we set out with when developing the budget was to holding or reducing costs at their 2020 level. Overall, we're requesting the same number of staff that we have this year, so there's no change in that. Overall, the budget is, the Hydro Department budget is down by 21.62, yes.
So with that lead-in, it was a tumultuous rate-setting season 18 months ago, and we did this and that with the budget. So the clarity that you just spoke with, that we're holding our, where is the mandate? Where are we with regards to what this board has put on staff? You just said we're holding it to the 2020 or something.
Well, that was
Mandate?
That was the goal when we established the budget here.
But I mean, is that something the board put on you?
No.
Water rates committee.
And have anything, you remember, I mean,
Okay,
we kind of
yeah.
did this, and then we
Yes
did
and no, yes and
then
no.
we redid the budget, and then we didn't redo the budget, and so I'm just looking for an update of what have we dictated to staff?
So I think the current effort was that the staff was to see if they could cut the budget back far enough such that a rolling of the 5.72 rate increase for the next year would be appropriate, would be doable. Otherwise, we were headed down a new rate setting path.
And where did that sense come from?
And that came out of the rates committee meetings that have been ongoing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you on rates? Okay, so you guys are getting direction from the rates committee. I can forget all that stuff that went on 18 months ago, a little bit. It is what it was, it's
It is
memorialized in history.
It is what it was, but it established the ability to do a 5.72 rate increase for 3 years. The
Right.
third year is next year.
Right.
And in order to do that rate for next year, staff was directed to see if they could go back and cut their budgets such that doing only 5.72 for next year fit and didn't injure our reserves and allowed us to continue to
So
operate.
this is
And
rates
it-
committee.
And it includes the concept that we're only transferring in $6 million from hydro instead of more.
So,
Those two.
So this is from the board, the representative being the rate committee.
the rates committee came to the board about 4 or 5 weeks ago,
Yes.
before August, with a seeking direction. The board gave direction for the rates committee for a couple different things. One is to utilize taxes to help pay down debt.
Mm-hmm.
The other is to look for cost-saving methods within the district to help offset costs or revenues that we knew the water budget would not see because we couldn't pull any more hydroelectric reserves over. So we had to come up with this. So staff, with some of that direction, the rates committee, I think, following, we came and looked at the package, and staff essentially said, you know, with tax revenues coming to help pay down debt, there's still a delta that needs to be established in order to balance the 2021 budget. So these budgets that you're seeing are, well, that have come through APC now, that have come through engineering committee, that will come through the WHO today with the water budget, and then with maintenance next week. We will see a general balancing of the budget for 2021, given a 5.72 package. So it's kind of a roundabout way, Scott, to say, yeah, the board gave direction to the rates committee, the rates committee is moving forward. We would have had a meeting yesterday, but we're gonna have that, we had to cancel it because of the fire. We'll have that set for, Monday, I believe, is the next rates committee. So to answer your question in a roundabout way, the board gave direction to the rates committee is speaking with staff is developing budgets to reflect, zero or less or reduction in expense from last year's budget in order to meet the delta that we're seeing.
And offload the hydro subsidy.
And keep, no, we're still planning on bringing the $6 million over to the hydro, but not the 13, there you go.
Okay. No, she said it with such conviction, I'm going, where are you getting at? And that makes sense, I've been here, I guess.
Okay.
It got a little weird there.
Yeah.
Yeah. We redid the budget, and we're doing it on the budget, it wasn't the redoing budget.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, all that, so we've cleared all that, and now we're just operating with direction from the rate committee. Good.
Which was a direction from the board.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so overall, what you'll see is that the hydro department budget is down 21.62%. Obviously, the overwhelming majority of that number is the decrease in the transfer down to $5 million. So while I'd love to say I came up with 20% of savings, I did not.
It's still looking really good down there.
Overall, though, I am the overall hydro through the three hydro departments. The budget is down by 1.35%. So there is some savings there. We have also absorbed in that decreased budget significant increases to our insurance costs. You'll see that as we walk through the line items here, and then a noticeable increase in our federal, state, and county fees that we're paying. These are the various fees to do business. Yep. So with that, we can walk through the hydro department budget line.
I have one question, just surface, got four sections, what do you call it?
Yeah, summaries there, yeah.
That capital projects are only in admin and not confused about why they wouldn't be in other, or there's capital projects over there. Okay.
So that's just the way we budget the hydro capital projects.
All right.
They all land in the administrative department. We decided that a capital project touches operations, it touches maintenance. So when all three departments could carry that load, then we just default to the administration budget. That's why you'll see that our fees all come out of the administrative budget. All of our costs like that come from there. So.
And then generally on that subject, capital improvement is always something that needs to be ongoing. Is that in a general way for the next year? Is that taking a hit anywhere? Is it something that's going to be, because I keep hearing about Chicago Park Rewind and transformers.
Yeah.
Where are we generally with that?
So
in this year's budget?
Yeah, so we're on track with the capital budget. On the hydroelectric side, I don't know the water side.
Right.
The details there. But details of that were presented to the engineering committee here a couple of weeks ago, and the specifics of that were, but the hydro budget remains on track. I don't know if there's anything from the water side there. Okay.
We'll ask that in a few minutes.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Well, maybe
We're shadowing.
Maybe a little longer.
Give Chip some time to answer.
Yeah.
All right, so
question, right?
starting on page 1 of 19, these are just the costs associated with staff. Marvin cranks through all these numbers. We tell him how many bodies we have, what step they're at. He makes some assumptions in terms of step increases and comes up with these numbers here. So there's really not a whole lot to talk about there. So I'd like to start on page 2 with the more O&M sort of costs. You can see that we're holding our chemicals at the same rate. That's generally the chemicals that we use are fuel on the admin or the hydro side. We've had a significant cut to our equipment maintenance, and a lot of that is temporary office space. We had planned to bring in a portable building to the hydroelectric headquarters over there. In the day and age of COVID, we're doing a whole lot more remote working. We've got less folks coming into the office, so we're going to forego that temporary office space, and we'll see how that goes over in the coming years. Our material budgets are down. Safety budgets are up slightly, the 52505 you'll see there, and we spent a pretty significant amount on safety equipment this year. You'll see in the 2020 forecast, we spent almost $16,000, almost $17,000 there. That was largely driven by the K-rails and the Jersey barricades that we had to put in up at the Dutch Flat Forebay to keep people out. And so we don't anticipate that budget will be the same going forward. Small tools, this is on the admin side, so it's any sort of GPSs that we need or any of that, not computers, but stuff that we need there. You'll notice a significant increase to our consulting contracting fees budget. That's the 52603 account on the top of page 3. This is largely driven by the FERC mandated Part 12D inspections. We're required every 5 years to go out and retain an independent consultant to come in and review our facilities. You'll see for that line item alone, we have $440,000. Sure I'm tracing that over correctly, yes. So that's driving that significant increase to the budget.
But the dam safety is, those two swapped.
So what I did there is, previously, I haven't given a whole lot of detail on what dam safety studies we're going to do the next year. So I've laid out the specifics of those. They do total more than that $400,000 in the 2020 budget. But you can specifically, next year we're going to do our Part 12D inspection. We need to do a seismic stability study out on the Milton Dam. And then we need to start looking inside of our penstocks. A lot of these people haven't been in quite a while. Over the years, I've really pushed condition assessment. We've done all of our tunnel inspections. You'll see the results actually during my update of one of our flume inspections that we've done recently here. And so I'm trying to set aside some specific money to get inside these things. This will be probably retaining a specialty consultant. This is a confined space where you're rappelling down pipelines, so it's not something staff does on the regular. So
25-year-old, right?
Yeah, this is some specialized sort of work that we're talking about doing next year. I did want to point out that one of the things that I did cut in order to make this budget work was the pre-license implementation of FERC conditions.
I wondered about that.
Yeah, historically we've put some money in the budget to try and do some of these the studies that we know are going to be required by the FERC license, so some of the management plans. This is where I can cut because it's not required. I'll leave that to the two of you to determine whether or not that is the best path to head down. The license is coming. I still can't give you a timeline on when we're going to have it, but that license has some pretty steep requirements in the first couple of years. By moving this forward, we're essentially saying that we're not going to do any of that work. So, like I said, I'll leave it to you.
I know.
There are so many other
How many
requirements with FERC that we're needing to do, like Ian says, that, this is a tale of two woes, right?
Right.
We're trying to balance, Ian and his crew are trying to balance and walk a very fine tightrope here. And, I think through their assessments and our discussions at this point, this is the prudent method to be able to require us to do all the information that we know we need to do now, and we're again delaying activities that will come. I'm not saying they're not going to. They will come. We are understanding that they will. But we have made other choices to do certain things, and now we're staring down a bit of the consequences of those, where we need more money back in the hydro reserves and package to get moving forward.
Okay, so moving on, I've 52604. I've left my legal fees fairly high. We're still feeling some of the consequences of the PG&E bankruptcy. We still haven't received payment for everything that they owe us as a result of that. So I think it's prudent to continue to leave that budget fairly robust. Moving on from there, franchise fees. These are essentially the fees that we pay for the privilege to connect to the PG&E grid. You have to pay PG&E for any upgrades to their systems that they require. So these numbers are all shown in there to just connect. If you want to do hydro, if you want to connect your generation, you get to pay those fees.
Those are annual fees?
We pay them monthly. So yeah, every month we get a bill, and then yeah. But that is an annual total.
But not no annual charge. I mean, all the time.
Yep. As long as we stay connected, we'll pay these fees.
Okay.
So, moving along to 52608, the top of page 4, which is our federal, state, and county fees. Here's where you'll see some of our increases. Our water rights fees are up. I've broken down. You'll see the FERC land and admin fees. I used to lump sum budget those as $350,000. The next two line, the admin fees, and then the land fees. I've broken those up so you can see what portion comes from which piece. And then the other significant increase I'm expecting here is another year of rate increases out of the Division of Safety of Dams. That's the California Water Resources dam fees there. They seem to have slowed down their increases, but it's going to keep going up. And that's something that we have no control over.
Are these FERC fees, are these annual fees not associated with our new license?
Correct. These are just for what we have out there now under the existing license. Yeah. All right, if there are no questions there, I'll move to 52704. These are our insurance fees. You can see here that they've more than doubled. This is as a result of the equipment that's out there. I think, and we're working really hard to get these reduced. We have a significant amount of testing that's going to go on out there this year. We have a representative from, I believe it's Zurich Insurance Company, that's going to come out and do a physical inspection, and that should help us lower those fees moving forward. But that is what we are looking at in 2021. I've left our dues and publications fees alone, so that's 52706. Office supplies, again, I've left it alone, carried over the same budget. So then moving on to page 5, I've left the 52711, education, trainings, and meals alone. Utilities, I've budgeted at the same level. I think we're comfortable there. I have cut under 52901 the land and easement purchases there. I've cut that number. I think we're about done buying property from PG&E. We've gone through this process where we've condemned the underlying land under our facilities up in the upper division and then under the Chicago Park and Dutch Flat flumes. So I think we're about done, and I would expect this number to continue to drop over the years. We have one vehicle that needs to be replaced this year in the admin side. That's just a routine replacement. I believe it's a 2005, the old Envoy that we have over there. So that'll get replaced in next year is our plan. Safety equipment. Again, there's some general safety here, but this is where we pay for some of our security upgrades and some of the stuff that we need to do out there. And then we start rolling into the capital budget. I can answer any questions about these projects here, but as I mentioned, the engineering committee heard a detailed discussion of each of them and was comfortable moving forward with the capital budget that's shown here. All right, so then there's no questions there. We'll move on to page 8, which is the Hydro Operations Department budget. Again, page 8 is mainly the staffing costs. So this is when the numbers crank through for each individual body. This is how much they cost. And so not a whole lot to discuss there if we're comfortable with the staffing. Page 9 again, where we start walking through the same categories. I've kept the chemical expense the same. The next line item there, the 52503 equipment maintenance, this tends to be a lot of software licensing. This is where we pay for our Hydroelectric license, which is how we track our water through the system. OSI is our SCADA software. The Tempest is how our satellite communications come into the headquarters for reservoir levels, flows, that sort of stuff. And then I've budgeted a significant amount again for hydrography expense. We continue to replace the equipment in the upper division, and this is just how we roll through each of those individual gauging stations and buy equipment for it. I've kept the materials budget the same, safety budget the same. I've gone up a little bit on our small tools budget, the 52506. That's where you'll see some of the smaller standby generators that we're purchasing to keep our facilities alive during the PSPS events. This is, as I mentioned in the previous item, we have quite a few small power services out there, microwave buildings where we have communication equipment. So we'll put a little Honda 2000 generator out there every year so we can, every PSPS event, keep the communication up so that it buys that equipment there. This year we went through and installed all the manual transfer switches out there, so we are ready to go. The consulting budget under the operations department is largely driven by helicopter expenses, where I've moved down to 52603. This varies year to year. If we have a heavy snow year, my helicopter budget tends to be significant. If we have a dry year, then my helicopter budget's very low. So, but that tends to be what drives that budget item. Moving down, the next thing that the water operations pays for here on page 10 is 52710, the office supplies. You'll see that as we continue to roll through transition to a more remote working style, I've budgeted more for tablets and phones and computers and stuff of that nature. Depending on how things move forward, we may or may not use this budget. If we get a vaccine and we're all fine and we go back to office work, great, we won't spend this money, but I'd like to have it there. I think it's prudent at this point to make sure it's available. Education and training and meals, we do have I've held off on hiring an operator for the Deer Creek Powerhouse until that moves through. When we hire that operator, presumably we'll need to send them down to the PG&E HOIT, Hydro Operator and Training School, and that's the majority of that money. It's extremely expensive. Utilities is just the same old septic pumping that we always do. Moving on to page 11, the operations department only needs...
Out there at the Secret Town?
So we have septic tanks at Rollins, at all the powerhouses. Yeah. Yeah, so they don't have...
We don't leach them
because we're on the river.
We're on the river.
So, yeah, so we...
I wondered about that.
Yeah.
When we were down there.
No, it just goes in a tank, and when the big red light comes on, you call them, and they pump it out. Yeah, so...
You still call it septic? Seems that you call it a cistern or something.
That's probably a fair... I know we call the septic pumping company, so...
Right, but I mean,
yeah.
it's with the leaches.
Yep.
I think septic means it has. But I don't know. Word game now.
I'll have to, I'll look into that.
Holding tank.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
All right, so the operations department needs one truck next year. The hydro operations needs one pickup truck next year. I don't have the details on which truck we're replacing, but it is another older one. And then again, we have some equipment purchases. You'll notice this is dramatically down. We had standby generators in there last year where we bought some very expensive equipment. That is all in and over at Hydro today and getting prepped for the expected PSPSs. So that's exciting. We'll be ready to go there. And then, that's the last item in the hydro operations budget. Any questions about those? All right, so then we'll move on to page 13, which is the hydro maintenance budget. Again, first page is the staffing numbers that get cranked through and handed to us. So moving on to page 14, the hydro maintenance budget. Again, chemicals, this tends to be transformer oil when we buy that. You routinely take samples of your transformer oil and have it sent off and analyzed to make sure your transformer is in good condition. You have to replenish that oil as you move along, so that's what that ends up buying. Equipment maintenance, again, this is software licenses. This is, that's what the 40net equipment there is the software or the hardware that we use on our SCADA system. And I've done a little trimming of some of these budget numbers here, just based on what we've spent previously there. Moving down to 52504, our materials budget. This is everything we buy. If you need a new pump, if you need new, just any equipment in the powerhouse tends to come out of this budget. You'll also see a little bit more money in here for security upgrades. We continue to install security card readers at all of our facilities. Moving down to 52505, the safety budget.
You dropped it overall.
Yes. Yeah, so I've trimmed a little bit of money off of both the electrical and civil equipment there based on, like I said, largely we haven't spent that in the past, so we're just gonna tighten our belt a little bit and not spend it in the future. So I think we'll be fine there. And then we also did just finish one of the line item projects I have there, the Bowman transmission line protection upgrades. That went into service last year, so we don't need any additional money there. Moving on to safety, one of the drivers here is the arc flash clothing that we buy for the folks out in the field there. That's required when you're inside the powerhouse. You're wearing the arc flash gear, so we need to provide that to them. Small tools budget. This historically has been consumed by the tech shop, and so that's everything from your fluke gauges to your hammers that you buy when you're out in the field. All that budget the same. Consulting and contracting fees under maintenance. A couple of the big line items there. I've cut the electrical support. We have an extraordinarily talented electrical tech shop at this point, and they're doing a lot of this work. And basically, what's happening is they're designing it, and then we'll ship it out to an engineer, and the engineer gives us the stamp that we have to have before we install it. But our tech shop is first rate on the hydro side at this point. The other big light item there is vegetation management. As we continue to push trees and brush away from the facilities, that's going to continue to be a big budget item. This deals with the Bowman transmission line. It also deals with the area immediately around the powerhouses.
Those are contracted out?
Generally. So we do as much of it as we can. If it's inside the fence, certainly we're going to take care of it. But we actually just issued or will issue within the next week or so 3 contracts for veg management out on the Bowman transmission line. It's just we can't do it cost effectively. These guys that have these crews, they're very efficient and have all the equipment. So.
Bowman transmission line, is there anybody out there who's gonna pick up the haystack?
So to date, they have not declared bankruptcy. They are doing everything they can. I have been working with them diligently.
Perpetuate themselves?
I am doing everything I can to hook them up with people that will buy the power that comes off that transmission line. I'm really trying to help them stay viable. I think it's in our best interest to have somebody out there at Haypress operating.
After they were so, this is it, walking away is what they said.
I have been doing my best. There has been a lot of work going into trying to keep them together. Both we're working with PG&E to try and get their generator interconnect fees taken care of, and I'm hopeful that we can keep them going. But it's still,
Not counting the 160,000 contribution just yet.
I am not counting on that contribution. I think it's prudent for us to assume that they're not going to generate.
And they're still in default.
They still.
We're doing a closed session item now, but.
No, they still owe us money. So, yep. All right, moving down to 52710, office supplies. Again, you'll see that I'm budgeting for tablets and phones to try and keep the crews working remotely as much as possible. This will also play in well with our CMMS system. As they're out in the field, they'll be able to receive their work orders electronically. They won't need to come into the office. It'll show up on their phone what they need to go do. When they go do the work, they'll punch in that they achieved the work. It'll automatically get sent back, and so that's what is required to support that. Moving down to on page 16, 52711, education and meals. Again, the biggest cost here is PG&E training. I continue to budget that, but you can see over the last 2 years we haven't spent it. We haven't been able to get in with PG&E. We are starting to find other training that we can send these folks to. It's a struggle and continues to be one of our biggest risks, in my opinion. And so we're working diligently on that. I hope to spend that entire budget next year, but we'll have to see how that goes. Moving down to 52905, the vehicle expenses. You'll see that we have one pickup truck we need. We've budgeted for a bucket truck next year. We think that this will help save us costs. Right now, we rent a bucket truck. We rent one of those all-terrain forklifts and lift people to places that we need to go. As we do more and more of this work, we believe this truck will save us money in the long run. We've added a UTV. This is just the normal wear and tear on the machines out there. And then one of the heavier duty machinist trucks need to be replaced this year, and those are not cheap vehicles. Moving down to 52904, equipment purchases. I've cut the budget a little bit here. This is the mid-year adjustment. You'll see some of the more expensive test equipment here that we're looking for. Some of this is being driven by the insurance testing requirements, specifically the HiPot or similar tester. That money, if we can do these tests in-house, and as I mentioned, we have an extremely good tech shop, they just don't have the tools to do the testing. I can tell you we spent right around $5,000 out of Bowman doing transformer testing out there this last outage. We're expecting to spend $5,000 at all three of the bigger powerhouses, Chicago Park, Dutch Flat, and Rollins, during our outages each. We'll spend $5,000 at each powerhouse at our outage this year. So buying this equipment will pay for itself very rapidly. And I think that's the last line item. Page 18 here and 19 are the staffing budgets. As I mentioned, everything has stayed the same in terms of the number of bodies. I'll note that some of these positions aren't filled right now. They're sitting there waiting for Deer Creek, and so I don't expect to fill them until Deer Creek becomes a bit more certain, and we'll save that money for as long as we can. So that is the hydro budget. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise,
Good.
thank you.
Do we have any public comment? Star 9 if you want to raise your hand and if you have any comments. Hearing and seeing none. Close item 4, move to item 5, which is the preliminary 2021 operations budget.
Chip, before we move on, do we need an official thumbs up out of the committee to advance this?
I think you're correct.
Okay.
You got
Got it.
For those listening, there was
Just wanted to make sure we dotted the i's. Yeah.
Okay, the water operations budget. So I'm gonna start off my discussion by saying this is a bare bones budget. We did our best to cut this back as far as we possibly could. And I think we're even at the point where this really is not sustainable for future years. This is a one-time cut and basically kicking the can down the road to get us through the next rate period, so that we can reassess from there.
I'll reiterate Scott's question about it, the board directive, that this is a pause.
Yeah.
It's not we're talking about pause but we know it's not sustainable.
Yeah. Having said that, through hard work, we have cut back the overall operations budget by $1.378 million. So a substantial trimming. So with that, within the operations department, we have customer service, cashiering, and water operations. The first one, as we jump into it, is page 1 of 15. At the top is cashiering. And there's really not a lot to go over in the cashiering budget. Essentially, the staffing is remaining the same, no changes there. As you move down to the next page, page 2 of 15, this is where the cuts came. Essentially, office supplies. We have taken that responsibility and task and transferred it into the customer service group, and so there's no budget for 2021 for that in cashiering anymore. And then additionally, education, training, and meals was all canceled as part of the last budget update, and so we cut that out of the budget as well. And that is the majority of the cuts you see in cashiering. Pretty straightforward there. Moving on to customer service, we're on page 4 of 15. At the very top, you'll see salary, and you'll notice we have a cut at the top. Basically what that is a result of is transferring the business services technician from customer service down into engineering. It was a somewhat of a better fit. She works hand in hand with a lot of the developers, and so it made sense to us. So although this is reflected as a savings in customer service, it is reflected as an increase in engineering staffing budget. So just an FYI. This is Shannon, correct, yes. Other than that, no major changes in that budget. If we roll on to page 5 of 15, we have equipment maintenance, no change there. Materials, we have a few changes here. Again, trying to cut back wherever we could. The majority of the cuts you're going to see in this category are from the district's conservation program. We had a water efficiency for school outreach. Well, given that the schools are in a state of limbo, we cut some monies there. Really not an opportune time to hold assemblies and talk about water conservation because they're not meeting on campus very often. We cut back to water efficiency projects a bit, and then the water efficiency program materials we've also cut back. There was one increase in that category, and that was on tank water and hydrant meters. We're finding that we are running out of hydrant meters every summer season, and so we need to increase the volume of those meters we have on hand so we can adequately track water usage and report it to the state. Next category down, safety supplies, no change. Small tools, no change. The next one is consulting and contractor fees. You'll see an increase in this category, and if you look at the detail, you'll see that the cellular meter data charges is where the majority of the increase comes from, and that's just a result of us putting in more of these smart meters, these Badger meters. Each meter comes with a service fee, monthly fee that we pay to get real-time reads, and as maintenance works with us and continues to retrofit and put more of these in, the costs are going to go up a little bit. So that's what that's about. Beyond that, we've done some cuts on the leak detection surveys. We have cut the rebate program. We implemented a toilet rebate program this year, which I thought was going to be a smashing success. And it was for the people who used it, but not a lot of people have used it. So I think we need to advertise it a little heavier next time around. But okay, moving on down. So now we're on page 6 of 15, and down to office supplies, 52710. This is also an increase for us. And it is a result of postage and billing. So we know that next year we're going to be doing another Prop 218 notification as part of the rates package we'll be discussing. And so in order to prep for that, we had to boost this category for the mailing. Each time we send out a mailing to our entire customer base, it's roughly around $40,000, so we needed to account for that. Yep. Moving on down, no changes in education. By the way, I mentioned we cut the education in the cashiering department, and all the other departments, we are not providing any additional education and training. We're only keeping monies in these budget categories to sustain licenses and continuing education units. So again, cut to the bare bones on those. Moving on down, no changes. So bank fees, we cut that back, and then vehicle purchases, we canceled any vehicle purchases for customer service for this year. Equipment purchases remain the same, and that kind of wraps up their budget. So we had a few increases, but they are unavoidable. Other than that, we cut wherever we could in the customer service department. Moving on into page 8 of 15 for the water operations department. Really, staffing-wise, again, no changes. Nothing to really speak of there. The one change you do see is the standby pay. You know, operations departments running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Some of that is done through standby pay, and we wanted to accurately reflect that. So that there's an increase to be more true with what we truly experience, as you can see in the actual 2019 expenditures. Moving on, page 9 of 15. Oh, excuse me, before I move on. Page 8 of 15, we have chemicals at the bottom, 52501. You can see we are expecting a bit of an increase in this category, and this is solely due to the increased cost for water treatment chemicals. Cost of doing business, unfortunately. Okay, now moving to page 9 of 15, 52503, equipment maintenance. We trimmed this back quite substantially, but walking through it, you're going to see some very minor cuts in almost every category, but some of the major cuts came from filter media replacement, filter media repair and replacement. So basically every year we go through and maintain the filters at our water treatment plants. Either sometimes it's a full replacement of the media and the filters, other times it's just a minor topping off. We feel like we can pause that program for 1 year and just do a topping off of the media on the filters and save us about $60,000. So we have implemented that. And then moving on down, the next fairly large change is going to be from the gearbox, motor, and pump repair. We cut another $10,000 out of that. Then the thought process behind that is that should still cover at least one gearbox and get us through the year. So as I mentioned, we've cut this back to bare bones, but we didn't cut it to the point where we feel like we'd be left in an emergency situation without funding for emergency scenarios. However, if it's a large item with a major emergency event, we're going to have to rely on reserves. So that kind of sums up that category. Materials, 52504. We did some pretty heavy cutting in here as well. You'll see the vault lid replacements. We've put those off for a year, so that's a $20,000 savings. We cut $10,000 out of the cross-connection backflow program. Moving on down, we've cut sample stations. We're going to install a few less this year. We've trimmed back on our water box tags and locks. Our campground meters are all installed, so we don't have that $2,000 fee for this year, so that's great. Automated measuring stations. We're having trouble getting as many in as we initially anticipated. It takes a lot of staff time, but we don't want to give up on it. And so we still have 10,000 in there, but we cut it back to be more realistic with what we think we can get put in. Other than that, just pretty much minor cuts. Moving on down into the top of next page, 10 of 15, we have safety supplies. I pretty much left most of these categories the same with the exception of elevated work platforms and gates. Basically on top of every one of our storage tanks, we're supposed to have a gate that, per Cal OSHA, that closes behind the employees on its own. We've been retrofitting our 44 tanks, And we're getting close to being done, but we cut back a little bit this year to slow that down and save some money. The next category, small tools, 52506, we cut that back, and basically we're just going to hold off on buying any expensive tools for the next year and make do with what we have the best we can. 52507, water purchases. This is the account where we purchase PG&E water from when necessary. Generally speaking, we buy on average somewhere between 5,000 to 8,000 acre feet from PG&E every year. But given the current conditions and being that we're at 104% of average, we felt it prudent to cut this back a little bit, thinking we may not have to buy as much. So we'll keep our fingers crossed there. 52603, some pretty significant cuts in this category, and quite frankly, it's all from the Ag and Urban Water Management Plan. And really, that's just because the funds for this were transferred down into engineering. Those programs are still moving forward, but not coming out of the operations budget. You'll see some minor increases in this category. For instance, the water rights fees, we've boosted from $25,000 to $50,000. And this is in an effort to hopefully study water transfers and have the consultants help us through that process, because it's something the district has not partaken in the past. We're going to need some help navigating those waters. Moving on down, legal fees. No pun intended. You guys caught that, was good. Legal fees, for some reason, we didn't have any funding in that for 2020. Obviously, we're going to need some in there. Put $8,000 in for 2021, again, to help us with the water issues. 52608 at the bottom of the page, Fed, state, and county fees. Huge increase. But really, this is due to the water rights issue and the fact that the state has charged us so much extra for our pending water rights petitions. We are contesting that fee. We have not heard back yet whether or not they're willing to drop those fees. But in order to be prudent, we had to put it in our budget to be prepared to pay it again should they uphold their theory on what the bill should be. Other than that, just some minor increases here and there. Nothing groundbreaking. Really, it's all about the increase to the water rights, unfortunately. The rest of what you see in here is all of our treated water sampling, and none of that is a major change for us, and all required by regulation, I should add. Next category down, 52609, temporary labor. For whatever reason, we cut back our temporary labor last year at the request of that mid-year budget adjustment, but we do know that we need more than that. We utilize these temporary laborers to get our flushing and valve program done every year, which is part of the state regulations, and so I bumped that back to $80,000. That's still not what we used to budget. We used to budget over $100,000 a year, but I feel like we can get done the minimum with the $80K, so hopefully that'll be the case. Dues and publications, we cut back a little bit. Office supplies, also trimmed that back as well. Education, training, and materials, again, we cut this back. This is hopefully bare bones to get us through the continuing education units required to maintain licensure. Utilities, this was also a big cut, and I can't take the credit for this. This is thank you Hydroelectric very much, because they're using the RES VCT program at Scotts Flat to help offset our utilities costs. So that's a great cost savings. Yeah, it's awesome. Vehicle purchases, we trimmed this back big time. We had over 5 vehicles we were going to purchase. We've canceled all those. We're really only going to purchase 1 truck this year, and that's only because it's at 115,000 miles, and so it's time. The other ones had a little less mileage on it. We think we can delay them for a year, but realizing, again, kicking the can down the road means we're going to be catching up in future years, so just FYI. Equipment purchases. Now we're getting into the capital equipment side of things, and Director Beerwagon, I know you asked about that. There are 2 portions of capital in our budget. The ones we're gonna discuss here in the next few line items, come out of the ratepayers fund. And so we've done our best to cut those back as much as we could. The bigger projects, are funded through tax revenue. And those are unaffected. So those high priority projects remain in the queue and are moving forward.
Engineering budget?
They're in the engineering budget, correct. So having said that, equipment purchases, we have cut this budget back. The majority of the cuts come from the Lake Wildwood filter valve replacements. We're gonna do a few less valves this year. Still gonna do a few though, because we can't just stop there meeting their life expectancy and failing, so we need to have some monies in there to get that done. We've cut back on the chlorine analyzer replacements. At the top of the next page, 13 of 15. We have installed most of the high lift pumps we needed to for capacity reasons, and so we were able to cut that budget back substantially, down to 7,000 from 40. Tank mixers, we are going to purchase less of those this year. We're approaching the point where almost all tanks that need them have mixers in them, so we're ramping that program down, which is great. The next one, 52915, non-programmatic, we cut back there, and basically water treatment plant security. We're not gonna ignore it. We still have some door locks and automation that we need to put in at a few treatment plants, but we've cut back how much we're gonna do next year. 52930, chemical tanks and pads. This is critical. We had a chemical tank fail on us here about 2 weeks ago, and it really emphasized how important these are. And so I rolled that budget for at least one tank purchase next year. It's something we have to have in the budget every year for emergency purposes. We were able, however, to remove the lime silo line item for next year. It just means we're going to have a non-utilized lime silo sitting at the Lake of the Pines treatment plant for another year. It's just going to sit there. It's not going to hurt us. And that's it. So that is the summary of our budget. The staffing, as I mentioned earlier, really no change other than the transfer of the business services technician from customer service down to engineering. Other than that, it's the same FTEs for operations. Any other questions? Do we have any public comment or questions? Okay, Mr. Norton, you've been unmuted.
Good morning. Mr. Close, you did an
Yes, sir.
admirable job in cutting your budget. What I wondered, if for a more sustainable budget in 2022 and beyond, would that be reflected by approximately the 2020 budget?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think you're pretty close. I think if we can rebound back to those totals, it will get us back to operationally close to normal mode, but some of the items we need to make up for, like the vehicle purchases, are gonna put that over the 2020 budget for a while as we play catch up. Hard to say what that number exactly is, but yes, for a few years, we're gonna have to catch those things back up.
For the Lake Wildwood treatment plant, those repairs that were budgeted in the capital improvement program of $600,000, those are going forward in 2021?
That's a question for the engineering side of the world. It is part of the capital program in engineering, and as far as I know, the budget is still there for the treatment plant itself. There was talk about the backbone extension line being cut back, but the plant upgrades, as far as I know, are still in the budget.
Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Hearing and seeing none, I'm hopeful to get the authorization to push this up to APC.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, directors. Very good. With that, we'll close that, and we'll move on to the activities report. It's been a long meeting, folks, so I'm just going to verbally go through this, and I'm going to be very quick. So Bowman Lake precipitation, we're in the middle of summer. The water season started in July, we have nothing to report. It really hasn't rained up there. Reservoir storage continues to be the highlight at 217,000 acre feet, or 104% of average for this time of year, and we remain at 80% of capacity. We are right on target with our storage forecast for 2020, so kudos to the Water Resources team. They nailed it there. And with that forecast, we do anticipate finishing the season above our carryover target and above our historic average, which is great. Treated water conservation continues from our folks. Again, I say this every time, but it appears that the old saying of conservation as a new way of life has really taken hold, and it's just the norm now. We are 14% below our 2013 usage, so that's great news. And then as far as what our crews have been up to, basically our distribution crews have been managing and navigating a PG&E South Yuba Canal outage for some algae growth, so that was interesting, and did some juggling, fired up our siphon lane pump station, and all the backup systems took over, and we were able to do a fairly good job of very minimal inconvenience to our customers, so pretty cool there. We are PSPS prepping. We have generators ready, and we have designated the critical locations that don't already have permanently installed generators. We have designated those locations where we will send our trailer-mounted generators, so we're prepared there. We have lots of demand water requests coming in because it's been hot and dry. We just got through the Section 9 update for the backflow and cross-connection control program. That's great. And then we have had our hands full with the Jones Fire. Our crews were actively out there managing the water system and protecting the raw water side from the firefight activities going on. Our canal took a direct hit of retardant, but our crews were out at the scene, actually witnessed it, and were able to drive down to the treatment plant at Lake Wildwood, isolate the system, allow that retardant water to pass, and so kudos to them for catching all that, protecting the drinking water system. Yeah, it presents all kinds of challenges when you have open canals. And then on top of that, our treated water crews have been working diligently at filling all the storage tanks in near the fire area. So the Cement Hill side of the world, North Bloomfield, all of that side, we've filled up all our tanks, topped them all off. And we know the fire crews are using the hydrants out there, so it's great to be helping out however we can. In addition, the treated water team has produced 348 million gallons of water in June, 423 million gallons in July. They continue sampling with lead and copper. Highlight there, a few years back we switched to caustic soda from lime, and it seems to be doing a better job of preventing any corrosion in our system. And this is the first time I can remember that we have completed lead and copper sampling and actually had non-detects anywhere in the system, so that's pretty cool. But we have completed the annual state report. We are in the mix of trying to replace a caustic tank that has failed that I mentioned earlier. We're working with the vendor there. We were 2 months outside of the warranty period. I don't know how you manage that. But they're gracious enough to be working with us, and they're going to give us a substantial discount and a replacement tank, so we're grateful of that. We continue operating the campground systems, and we are working on a contract for the Lake Wildwood lime silo removal. We do need to get that one removed because we need to put a backup caustic tank in that location, and that comes out of this year's budget. Water Resources. As I mentioned earlier, we're still waiting on a water rights fee response from the state. We are continually cross-training our hydrographers. We've been working close with the Hydroelectric side of the operations department, and cross-training each of our teams on everybody's facilities, which is really cool, and I like to see that.
Yeah, I think it's really strengthening the district's bench.
Yes, I agree 100%. I think it's been a great move. Still working on getting PG&E settlements. We've been paid for, I think, 1 or 2. We got a couple left. So out of that bankruptcy hearing, some payments have come, but not all. Customer service, we're still managing and maintaining the online bill payment service. We're over 6,000 people now utilizing that service. The lobby, is back open. We were closed for one day due to the fire, but that's all back up and operational. And I mentioned this earlier, the COVID fee forgiveness that we're currently implementing is probably costing the district roughly about $1,500 a week. So probably something we ought to monitor and see when the state starts relaxing some of those regulations, and we'll have to do the same as soon as we can. And unfortunately, we have a dispatcher that has informed us they are moving on, so we'll be recruiting for a dispatcher here shortly. The electrical department is testing the new generators that came in, and we test ran them at the Magnolia 3 canal. At the head of the canal there, we pump water from the Combi phase all the way up to the top of the hill and feed Lake of the Pines treatment plant and all those folks on that canal. I'm happy to report the new generator did an awesome job and can run all 3 pumps. So that's great news. The electrical department helped Hydro complete the comms for the Cal ISO meter up there, so that was cool. And again, another example of coordination and working with across the lines, which was great, very successful. They're also working on the Bear Valley House auto switchgear. And they're working on a card lock system install at the East Annex across the parking lot. And then they continue to work on the copper for the new portable generators. So, yeah, I'm going to wrap that. I don't have the benchmarking for you. I'll have that for you next time around in order to save a little time here. So with that,
All right.
transfer it over to Kian.
Yeah, Pam, can you put up my presentation? I have a couple of pictures. I'll move quickly through mine as well. There are a few things that I want to make sure that we see the actual pictures of. All right, so if you want to, next slide. Great month for us in terms of powerhouse outages. We had one day-long outage out on the Fall Creek, on the Bowman Powerhouse to inspect the Fall Creek flume. We identified some problems out there during our annual outage, put a temporary patch on it, and needed to inspect that patch. It's doing okay. It ain't great, and we're going to need to do some work out there in the next couple of years, but we think it'll get us through. It's on an elevated flume on the Bowman-Spalding Canal out there, so, yeah. Rollins Powerhouse, we had a problem with a relay that just went bad, which is it's a troubleshooting nightmare when a relay for a mechanical piece of equipment goes bad. You got to get everybody out there, but the crews were able to put that back online reasonably quickly. And so, again, just a great month for us in July, which is really key. July, August, September are our big money-making months, and so we're doing really well. Next slide. I'll skip past the next 3. It's our KPIs. We're starting to see some overlap. So, yeah, keep going. All right. So some of our key activities. We continue to work to make Bowman Powerhouse as reliable as possible. This is part of our protection upgrades on the Bowman transmission line, and then we've had some problems with the Bowman transformer out there sending us false information. We revised the protection scheme out there, and we believe this winter, knock on wood, we're not going to have to go out there a whole lot when things go bad. We did our annual outage at the Combi South Powerhouse, very routine outage, other than we did a little bit more testing than we normally would for the new insurance program, working to bring both those premiums and the deductibles down. We continue to, much like the water operations side of the house, it's all about transfer switches and generators and whatnot. The PSPSs are bearing down on us. We've installed some remote sensing equipment out at the Fenley Snow Course. This is kind of a big step for us and the region. We have a snow fox out there, I believe is what it's called, and we're going to start being able to remotely sense how much snow is on the ground out there, relay it back in real time, and so we'll start correlating that to our actual snow surveys. This is a fairly, we're on the cutting edge with this piece of equipment out there, and it's not your traditional snow pillow. This is an actual piece of equipment that looks up through the snow, determines how much is there, and tries to give us some information about it. Very excited to see that work, and hopefully we have a good snow year and can really put it to use out there. Yeah. we continue to have problems on the Texas Creek Walk Bridge, and so we're slowly replacing that over the years. We installed fiber optic cable from the Dutch Flat Powerhouse to the forebay. This will be a significant increase to our security out there, and we'll be able to see a whole lot more of what the craziness is that's going on out there. And then we continue to deal with the public out there in the Dutch Flat forebay area. It seems to have mellowed out a little bit, at least on our property. It has mellowed out a little bit. I'm not sure where the usage has shifted to, but I believe the district has done our part by blocking the access out there, and so we'll see how that goes over the coming years. Next slide. So the one thing I did want to highlight was our inspection work out on the Texas Creek flume. So in the upper left-hand picture here, you can see, and it's really hard to see with this light, the flume from across the canyon. This is part of, I mentioned earlier, we're doing penstock inspections, and in 2021, we did tunnel inspections last year. We're focusing on our flumes this year. We had to bring in a specialty contractor to rappel down the hill there, and I think I gave you a picture of Dar Chen, our dam safety engineer, and Grant Nunnick, one of our water system operators, after they had rappelled down the hill to look at the foundation under this footing. We also sent down a geotechnical engineer, engineering geologist, and a structural engineer to look at this footing down there. The geotech guy described the undermining, and that's what you can see is happening here. The under, in that picture looking up in the lower left-hand side, under the shotcrete has begun to erode, and the geotech described our footing is now essentially sitting on rock that amounts to a stack of poker chips, in terms of...
So the bottom left-hand picture, that rock?
That rock is essentially broken out, and that post is sitting on rock that is not particularly stable. The rock is being held in place by the weight of the footing at this point. So
fine until we have an earthquake.
not an ideal situation for us to be in. We are going to go make some temporary repairs out there before the winter is the plan. We're also going to operate differently. We have a passive spill in that area, which is what you can kind of see in the very top right-hand picture there. So there's the lower section of the wall. When we get extremely high flows in the canal, it overtops here and flows down. We will operate the BS Canal very conservatively this year to avoid spilling in this area.
So this is the BS Canal, this is from across the Texas Creek.
It's immediately downstream of where it crosses Texas Creek. So, yeah. And so we'll put a Band-Aid on this thing for the winter. The engineers are still coming up with the plan of what the temporary fix looks like. It's probably going to amount to either pumping some concrete down there or even just taking some burlap sacks full of concrete and just setting them there and kind of building this thing up and protecting it. Then we'll hand it over to engineering and start looking at a long-term capital improvement sort of fix out there. So more to come on that one. And then next slide, Pam. So this is kind of, this is the new reality in the upper division. The usage that we are seeing out there, and if Monica were sitting here, she'd be saying exactly the same thing, it is absolutely out of control, the number of people that are in the upper division and some of the mentality that they're bringing with them. This is in the Emerald Pools area. This is district property out there, and so we got a call from environmental health that massive amounts of garbage are starting to pile up out there. What's going on? Is this an illegal, somebody illegally dumped? And no, this is people that don't understand pack it in, pack it out sort of stuff. So we have ordered a bunch of signs. I believe they came in last week, and so hopefully they'll get installed that essentially say, hey, look, there is no garbage service here. This is the forest. Don't leave it here. But in the meantime, we have now hauled out 2 truckloads of garbage out of there, and it's just, it is a real problem. I don't understand how you can drive all the way out to this beautiful chunk of land and just assume somebody's gonna pick up, you know, this is not your neighborhood regional park that you just pile it up there. This is, it's a different mindset.
Where is this,
So Bowman Lake Road, as you drop down, Bowman Lake Road, so you come in on Highway 20, go Bowman Lake Road, you drop down to the South Yuba River there, that's Lang's Crossing on the South Yuba River, it is right there. And this has been a problem you'll see on some of the CHP reports or the Sheriff's Department reports. There are so many people in this area that they're parking illegally and almost blocking traffic.
my sisters, they went up to Fuller and said, they didn't understand how many cars are on the road.
It's a parking lot. The road has become a parking lot. There was a complaint here last couple of weeks of a fire engine not being able to get through to do a rescue because the road was too narrow because people were parked on top of it. It's incredible. But anyway, we are doing our part to try and keep the NID properties clean and keep the forest clean in general. But it is a significant amount of work. Like I said, 2 pickup truckloads of garbage have come out of it.
They all need a user fee.
Monica and Greg and I have talked about
A toll booth on the road when you get there, right?
It's never been seen like this before,
Yeah.
ever.
I think Monica mentioned that she's brought in 2 or 3 extra dumpsters.
Extra dumpsters, put them in places that normally aren't there.
Increased the amount of garbage pickup she has a week, and
And it's not just us, it's the Forest Service, it's other recreation
So this is all
facilities.
COVID related. That means people have time and money to go there, right?
Well, they're off work.
They're off work.
Not
They
for
can
them.
afford to go from wherever they're coming from.
Different places are closed down, where
Yeah.
they normally would spend a
And
weekend
I
day.
get that. I would do this.
yeah,
However, don't trash them.
you pack out your garbage.
Pack it
Yeah.
out. And, state parks are seeing it, Forest Service is seeing it. It's not unique to, our facilities, but it really is a problem. We don't know how to deal with it.
Outdoor stuff.
Yeah. And so that concludes my report.
Okay, and I think that concludes we don't generally take comment after a update, however, got any issue with that? All right, go ahead, yeah.
I just had a question about, on the Texas Creek pillar. If that failed, what would be the impact of that?
So that is the Bowman-Spalding Canal. It is about halfway down through the system there. And so it would have a significant impact on the district's ability to import water from the upper division to the lower division. It would be a substantial problem. We'd have a real emergency sort of situation out there that we'd have to go fix it.
Is that something, if it did fail, is that something that could be fixed in a reasonable amount of time?
This is one of those, you want a good, cheap, or fast, pick 2. Yeah, I mean, I could have a contractor out there in days, and they could be pouring concrete, but it would be a fairly expensive fix. Anytime you fix something in an emergency, it is extremely expensive.
About a year.
Yep.
Well, I would think that loss of that water supply could be catastrophic to the district.
We've had problems before. A couple of years back, we had problems getting water through the Bowman Dam. We had a problem with the low-level outlet there. We were able to find workarounds and make it happen. This would be more significant than that because we'd lose any of our upstream diversions. But we have a very creative group of people that could come up with water for a couple of weeks if we needed to put together a temporary repair.
Well, thank you. I can imagine that is a pretty stressful situation if that occurred.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. And with that, we'll conclude the Water and Hydroelectric Operations Committee meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
You guys.